Welcome, everybody, to the Grueling Truth Sports Network. As always, the Grueling Truth is brought to you by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Make sure you check them out at betting.net. We're inside Boxing Weekly. Virgil Ortiz fights this weekend, Blair Cobbs and Maurice Hooker in a classic showdown that John can't wait for. And I am your host, Mike Goodpaster. I'd like to welcome in my co-host, John Raspanti. How you doing, John?
Doing really well, Mike. Thanks. Always a pleasure. Always fun to talk boxing with you.
Yeah, we're going to preview the weekend a little bit, which we've got some decent fights. Virgil Ortiz is fighting, as we said, Maurice Hooker's fight. We're going to talk a little boxing news with Joyce and Parker. We're going to look back at last week's Garcia Benavidez. And then, of course, our Old Farts Corner today will be on the career of Rocky Marciano. Let's start off by looking back at last weekend. Now, the one thing I will give you is this. See, Jose Benavidez, it was all right. I mean, I didn't see anything special about Danny Garcia that I didn't already know. The undercard, though, wasn't that bad. So we actually got three pretty good fights, John.
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad, and you're right. I mean, oops, there's my phone.
Was it 1980 in here with the ring on the phone?
Yeah, I should have. Let me mute this here, baby.
I thought it sounded like a wall phone was ringing, John. I thought it would be perfect if we could call somebody on Old Farts Corner.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it was Rocky Marciano calling. I don't know. Yeah, no, we don't have very many good undercard fights, and the fights were good and interesting, and that I never have been able to understand why promoters don't like to have good undercard fights. You know the famous line about Bob Arum saying nobody gives a damn about the other fights, all they want is the main fight. Well, maybe for some, but others want good fights because that, in a sense, builds it up for the so-called main fight, and then the main fight is a dud, but still, the other fights are good fights, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and did you see anything from Danny Garcia that makes you think that he could be more successful at 154 than he was at 147?
No, he is who he is. He's more counterpuncher. He came out and was punching more. Go to the body. I mean, solid technique and all that. That's why I call him Danny Solid Garcia. He's a solid fighter. He's a good fighter. He's the same Danny, though. What's he going to do? He's not going to change at 34 years old. So I think he's too small for junior middleweight. He wasn't knocking out anybody at 147 unless somebody like Rod Salka or somebody like that was probably 140 or something like that. He's not going to knock out a Charlo if he fights him. If he fights Errol Spence again at 154, no. So he's going to fight Lara supposedly, and he's not going to knock him out. But Lara will be moving around, and it'll be who punches more probably on that one. Lara's been actually sitting down on his punches more now that he's older. So he wants another title, and that's fine. But he's just, some people were going, wow, what a spectacular performance. I'm sorry, I just didn't see that.
There was nothing spectacular about the performance. I mean, there just wasn't. I mean, I'm sorry, but Danny Garcia is what Danny Garcia is. He's a solid fighter. Yeah. That's it. And there's nothing wrong with that because most guys aren't that way. I don't really think that the future is going to be great for him. I think that he can make some more money, fight Laura, maybe fight Keith Thurman, as we talked about the other day, in a rematch, make a little bit of money. But eventually, this probably ends bad at 154 for him.
Yeah, and then it got a little controversial when Errol Spence kind of ripped him online when Danny talked about his mental issues or depression or whatever it was, and Errol kind of mocked him and said, in a sense, I'm paraphrasing, I think this is what he meant. Hey, buddy, nobody cares about, you got all this money and everything, and hey, nobody cares about that. And not totally true, but he made his point, and Errol got some criticism for that, but he was given his opinion about airing your, I don't want to say dirty laundry, airing your issues publicly. And this depends on how you feel about something like that. And that brought into focus the possibility that they could fight again. I guess I don't think Errol Spence is thinking about that. He's thinking more about Terrence Crawford. But still,
I don't think he's thinking about Terrence Crawford. But
you don't think so? Okay.
if they were going to fight, they would have fought by now. Neither one of them has a fight scheduled for the future. They could fight this fall. I don't think they're going to fight. All
pretty
right.
Sad.
Yeah,
it's pretty sad. I don't really understand why they can't make it. Now they're haggling over money, from what I understand. Of course, they're haggling over money. They're going to haggle over everything and just haggle their way right out of the fight, and that just hurts boxing again. And that's the fight people want. It's to the point where it's almost getting like Pacquiao and Mayweather, when they fought, where people went ho hum. But I still believe if they do sign up, there will be a lot of interest and people.
Yeah, but this is the thing. They're not Pacquiao and Mayweather.
No.
So this is a fight that needs to be made when they're at their hottest. Because when you look at Pacquiao and Mayweather, they could fight today and people would still watch.
Yeah.
Spence and Crawford is not Pacquiao and Mayweather. It's not Leonard and Hearns. It's not De La Hoya and Trinidad. I mean, these are two guys that are known by boxing fans. The thing that made those other fights bigger, like Pacquiao, Mayweather, or Leonard Hearns, was the fact that people that weren't even boxing fans knew who they were.
True.
So
that's very true. That's a good point.
You know, do you think Spence and Crawford could do 1 million pay-per-view buys?
Probably not. No, probably not.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, the boxing fans will buy it, but more than half, probably maybe 500,000 or 600,000. But that was a really good point you made. If I walked up to somebody right now and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Errol Spence or Terrence Crawford?" They'd probably go, "Who?" But then if I said, "How about Sugar Ray Leonard?" Even though now Tommy Hearns, most people will go, "Oh yeah." And back then, if you were around back then, even though you're just a kid, when Hearns and Leonard fought, man, the buzzing about that fight was insane. So,
yeah. And the buzz about Spence Crawford will be insane among boxing fans. That's it.
Yeah.
They're not going to interrupt the ABC News to give you an update, on Spence and Crawford. All right. So we got fights coming up this weekend. Of course, we don't get to see Jake Paul and Hasik Rockman Jr. So, I mean, that'll tell you prayers can be answered. But then on top of that, I mean, and I just think it's sad. And we've got Blair Cobbs against Maurice Hooker. A lot of people can think that was sad, but Maurice Hooker was knocked out fairly recently by Virgil Ortiz about a little over a year ago. Blair Cobbs, of course, lost his first fight to Alex Roca not too long ago. This is a make-or-break fight, kind of what we talked about with the Konaki fight this past weekend.
Yes, that's why I wrote about it for The Grueling Truth. It might not be a big fan of big interest fight for boxing fans, but I look at personal things for fighters, and it's big for them. Hooker also got stopped by Maurice Hooker. Hooker also got stopped by Ramirez, and Blair Cobbs is Blair the Flair doing his Ric Flair. Now only Ric Flair can do Ric Flair. So he's the showboater. Some people like it, some people don't like it. He's almost made himself the villain. People were happy when he got stopped, and that's why I was talking about hype versus talent. You know, the hype obviously is a lot more from him. I don't hear anybody else saying how good he is or anything. So maybe that's a good segue from Jake Paul. He's done a good job of marketing himself to where people know about his Flair thing and either dislike him or not, and that brings the interest. Now, as far as the fight goes, if you were to ask me right now who's going to win, man, that's a toss-up. I mean, Blair Cobbs will be moving around doing his thing, bouncing, jumping, throwing punches, and Maurice Hooker should just stalk him and rock him if he still can. But to me, it's an interesting fight just because they're both 32 and they're both coming off losses, and I think it's either you win. And
the big difference here, John, is Hooker is a lot older 32 than Blair Cobbs is.
That's a good point again, Mike. And yeah, his legs are probably not what they were. So yeah, if maybe Blair Cobbs maybe can outpoint him, I don't know, maybe can stop him, but Hooker might be able to get him. He's punches pretty well, and Blair gets tired as the fight goes on. As Roca rocked him later in the fight. So I don't know. It's an interesting fight to me.
All right, then we got Virgil Ortiz against McKinson.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing that strikes me about McKinson is when you look at him, I mean, he's not a bad fighter, but when you look at his record, the thing that stands out to me, you got Ortiz who's knocked out everybody he's fought. You got McKinson who is 22-0 with 2 knockouts. To me, that makes it a stretch to win this fight because I don't think he's got the power to hurt Ortiz. I do think this. I do think McKinson is good enough to be the first guy to go to distance with him because McKinson has a tendency to make fights ugly.
Yeah, I've read that. I watched a little video on him. He's got a very unique style where he stands in the center of the ring sometimes. And
yeah, you say unique, I say ugly. All right,
ugly. Yeah, no, ugly is fine. 2 knockouts. I don't remember ever seeing a guy with 22-0 with 2 knockouts. Even Paulie Malignaggi had like 6 or 7. So that tells you that he can't break an egg. I mean, he's going to make it ugly and try to outpoint Ortiz, and Ortiz will. To me, this is just a showcase fight, Mike. I think they think that Ortiz is going to stop him in 19th knockout in a row. And McKinson he's a tough Brit and everything, but man, that's really stands out. 22-0 with 2 knockouts. I'm like, holy moly! I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, and my guess is it's going to be 22-1, and he'll probably be knocked out half the times he's knocked people out, but. I do think there's a chance he could go to distance with him here. Now, interesting today, I think it was confirmed, we got Joe Joyce and Joseph Parker. To me, this is a great matchup. This is a fight I'm really looking forward to. I think it's a shame that in England that it's going to be pay-per-view because this is not a pay-per-view quality fight. But this is a high-level heavyweight matchup for today.
Oh, absolutely. I've been a fan of Joseph Parker for years and years. And Joyce, I wasn't convinced about him. He looked like a statue in there to me. And then he beat Daniel Dubois, who we were both high on a few years ago. So, and then I watched him fight again. He can't duck right hands. He's never been hurt, I don't think. But I don't think that, in my opinion, that that's good for your future when you keep getting hit with right hands. Somebody's going to get you right one of these times. And Parker hits pretty hard, but he's kind of hesitant sometimes, but he looked good in the second Chisora fight. So I would think that he's got to realize he's got to be more active. And since he's won with Andy Lee, I think he's better as far as that goes. Andy tells him punch, and that's what he's got to do. And Joe Joyce is probably just going to do what he always does, just take those punches and just wear him down, try to wear him down. So yeah, I agree. This is one intriguing heavyweight fight, and we don't get very many of those.
Yeah, and to me, the question is this, though. We talked about this yesterday off air. Everybody hits Joe Joyce clean. Nobody even puts a dent in him. To be able to beat Joe Joyce, at some point, you got to put a dent in him. And we saw with Danny Dubois, who was an action fighter, threw a lot of punches. I mean, Joyce just he's slow-footed, but he takes a big punch. He throws a big punch. And if you would ask me 6 months or a year ago, I would have liked Parker. But I really am to the point where I think Joyce could just wear him down.
Well, right now, he's maybe slight edge for Parker, but I'm not necessarily believing that. I have to think about it some more and do some reading about it. And we got a month. But Joyce I just watched him recently, and it was the same thing. He just takes a few punches and then just starts pounding on guys, and he hurts them. They never hurt him, like you said. And Parker takes a good shot, though. Joshua hit him with some shots, and Chisora knocked him down, actually, in the first round. In the first fight, he takes a good punch, and he's a pretty athletic guy in there. So I would think he could outbox Joyce, who's slow, as we said, but that mummy, I'd call Joe Joyce the mummy, like Muhammad Ali called George Foreman, because he's so slow, But then, you call him that, but he starts pounding on you when he gets you. So it's something else.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight because I think we both felt the same way when Joyce fought Dubois. I think we both kind of slightly at least favored Dubois, but Dubois has the punching power. Now, Parker is a much slicker boxer, but I think we have seen Parker get tired late in fights too.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, that's going to be a problem against Joe Joyce, I think, for Parker.
Yeah, and that's what makes it a toss-up fight right now. I remember when Dubois was fighting Joe Joyce, and you and me were both convinced that Dubois was going to win. And then I have a friend in England who said, no, Joyce. And I went, really? You really think? He goes, yeah, Joyce is not going anywhere. He's always there. And I'm like, and that's kind of what happened. Remember, he broke the eye thing, the orbital bone for and Dubois just quit. And the fight was very close. Dubois was right there. So it's one of those deals. But I think Joyce can be beat. It's just a matter of you got to hurt him and you can't let him wear you down. And nobody has been able to do it yet.
All right. I guess it's on to Old Fart's Corner, which this week is going to be our favorite part of the show because there wasn't much to talk about boxing-wise. Real quick, I want to remind you the Grueling Truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sports book that's right for you. Make sure you check them out at betting.net. All right. Old Fart's Corner, Rocky Marciano. Now, Rocky Marciano is a guy, 49-0, 43 knockouts, that for some reason I don't think gets the respect that he deserves, John.
He doesn't. And the funny thing is I read about him in the Ring magazine, but I remember the first time I really saw him was when he was fighting Muhammad Ali in that computerized staged fight. And they showed a little bit of it where I lived. And that was right before he died. So later when I got to see tape of what you're showing, and he just would club guys with shots as we're seeing here, and that right hand of his was so powerful. I mean, you're not gonna hurt him. You might knock him down. He got knocked down twice. I think Archie Moore and Jersey Joe Walcott knocked him down. But I've told you, we've said this off air many times. I don't think, and people can disagree. I don't care. They can disagree. But who was tougher than Rocky Marciano? I mean, with the things that he went through, the Ezra Charles fight with the split nose, you talk about a guy that kept coming, and you want to stand there and punch with him. He's going to just crack you over and over, and overhand rights. I mean, the way he knocked out Archie Moore in his last fight, he wore him down and then just hit him with these clubbing right hands. And it wasn't pretty. His fights weren't pretty as we're seeing here, but he was relentless. And I think you're right.
And I mean, when you watch here, I mean, the thing that strikes me about watching Rocky Marciano knockouts, usually the knockouts are dramatic at the end, and that dude was not getting up. The fight didn't need to be stopped because the guy wasn't. It was obvious the fight was over when Marciano finished the fight.
Absolutely.
And you'll see a lot of people talk about and his power. I mean, Mike Tyson knocked guys out like this for a few years also, but Rocky Marciano knocked out Ezra Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott, Archie Moore. Those are guys that were generally being knocked out.
Yeah, and the way he knocked out Joe Louis. I mean, I don't care. Joe Louis was 36 years old, but he had him against the ropes, and he knocked him through the ropes out. I mean, that tells you the power.
Well, and Louis was a 6-5 favorite going into that
right.
fight.
That's right. He was
because Marciano, I mean he'd beaten guys. I think he beat Jimmy Bivens before that, hadn't he?
He did,
and he beat. I think he beat Nino Valdez or Bob Satterfield, one of the two, if not both. So I mean, it wasn't like going into the fight. Here's the Archie.
Yeah,
and I mean,
sure is.
The thing is when you listen to guys like Archie Moore talk about what it was like to fight Rocky Marciano, that should give you all the respect in the world you need for Rocky Marciano, because that's Archie.
Absolutely.
You there, John?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yeah, there I am. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
It's unfortunate that people tend to mock Rocky's record and everything because he 49-0, and who'd he fight? You know, what you always heard was guys like Archie Moore were past their prime and all that. Okay, all right, sure. Archie Moore went on after the fight to win a title. Ezra Charles was past
and defended it for like 5 years, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to put him down for what? I mean, that was Harry Matthews that he just knocked out with a left hook, and that was just beautiful. It was usually his right hand, but he also had a very powerful. Look at that. You know, it's actually he had a real powerful left hand too. So he just was. There's Joe Louis. He was, like I said, he was just relentless. When he started hitting you, he wasn't going to stop, and you weren't going to stop him. And this is a guy that was not a natural fighter in my view. I mean, he wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. there's the left hook. There's the left hook again, and knocked down Joe Louis. And he took on boxing, and he didn't know how good he's going to knock him out. Look at that. He didn't know how good he was going to be, and he just was. And I said, yeah, he's the toughest fighter as far as determination, relentlessness, heart that I think I've ever read about. He just refused to lose, Mike. That Charles fight, that was a tough one, and he just look at he knock out Ezra Charles, and you're right, he knocked these guys out. Cool.
Yeah, and I mean the Jersey Joe Walcott, maybe the most iconic knockout in boxing history, which I'm sure will be number one on this. And this, as
that's Ezra Charles.
Rocky's first big test was a 22-year-old Roland La Starza, who was 37-0 at the time, and La Starza was supposed to beat him. And the thing about Rocky is this: to me, a great fighter to rematch their own. And the thing is that was Rocky. I mean, you had La Starza. A lot of people thought La Starza should have won that decision. He comes back a few years later, defends his title against La Starza, knocks him out in the 11th round. You had Ezra to 15-round distance with him the first time. Rocky knocks him out in 8 the second time. Walcott, who he's trailing on points, knocks him out with the big right hook. He comes back a few months later and knocks him out in the first round. So he was a guy that you could say that it didn't look like he had a lot of technique, but he was a guy that for some reason was better in a rematch than he was in the previous fight, which usually is a sign of some intelligence there.
Yeah, and more talent than people give him credit for. I don't know if he necessarily made an adjustment. The Jersey Joe Walcott second fight, I always thought Jersey Joe got hit with that punch and went, you know what? I really don't want to do this again. That was the feeling.
Yeah, I think Jersey Joe was waiting to get hit so he could go down and end it, because I don't think he wanted to meet the same ending he did in their first fight. And the other thing is, if you look at the careers of these guys, outside of Archie Moore, none of these guys were ever the same after fighting Rocky Marciano.
Yeah, and that tells you a lot, because like I said, like I said, he just brutalized you. He beat you down, and you left a lot of yourself on the canvas when he did that to you. And he took a lot of shots too, Mike. But he just went right back in. He take a week back because he said, I always got to be in shape. I always got to be. So he's a guy that not only beat you he beat you, I think, as much with determination than with his right hand and his left hook. He's going to outwork you. I can't remember this guy who said, look, no one's going to ever outwork me. I'm always going to be in better shape. I'm always going to be better prepared. And that was him. I mean, maybe that was him that I remember reading that is he's never going to be the guy that gets tired first or the guy that loses whatever. He's always going to be a step ahead as far as preparation. And I mean, that tells you the determination level of that man. And yeah, to me, he's a legend. Obviously, he was spoken of very, very highly in my home, being the Italian, except with Joe Louis. But he's a legend, and he deserves it. People should give him his due.
Yeah, I think anybody that ranks him outside of the top 5 heavyweights of all time is insane.
Absolutely. I mean, people talk about his size. He was 5'10", 188 pounds, roughly, maybe 185. Yeah, that's a lot smaller in those days. But you can't penalize him because of the time. That's why I don't like that whole argument about that and this. I mean, he beat everybody they put in front of him. He knocked out 43 guys out of 49 fights. Come on, man. I mean, he knocks out ex-heavyweight champions. He deserves to be there.
And the big thing is this. The difference between him and a guy like Mike Tyson or even Sonny Liston was that how many times did those guys ever come back while they were losing to win a fight?
Yeah, absolutely. And Marciano had that mindset. The Walcott fight, there's no way in the world he's going to bite him or do anything stupid, even though he was losing. He gets knocked down right away. I remember Walcott saying, he's just an amateur. If I can't beat this guy, I'm going to retire. And he knocks Marciano down. And Marciano's bleeding, and he gets stuff in his eyes like Ali did. And he was having all kinds of issues in that fight. And he just kept coming. And that right hand that we saw a few minutes ago that knocked him out. Yeah, that just tells you the mind. Like I said, the mind. Listen.
In Walcott's defense, he did retire after the second attempt at him, I think. I don't think he fought again after that. I don't think Ezra Charles. I don't even know if Ezra Charles fought again after that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Ezra Charles kept fighting after that,
Did
but he
he?
was never
Okay.
the same. Yeah, he was never the
Yeah.
same. He just those kind of beatings. I mean, you look at the date too, Mike. The Ezra Charles fight, the first fight, they fought again 3 months later. It's not like now where they end up fighting
Yeah.
3 years later. They're back in the ring after going through hell.
Well, they didn't have Twitter where they could just talk shit to each other until they fight.
And they didn't talk shit to each other in those days. They just fought. So totally different time.
All right. So that's Old Farts Corner for this week with Rocky Marciano. John and I will be back next week. What's the big fight next weekend, John? Isn't that Campa and Teofimo?
Teofimo is coming back. The Takeover 2.0. I saw. So he's coming back. I know. That's why I'm laughing. I couldn't even say it was straight face.
Hey, we're only a couple weeks away from Joshua and Yusuf, though.
August 20th. That's huge. So I'm looking forward to that one. I feel sometimes like I'm the only one looking forward to it, but I certainly am. And yeah, we got to really talk about that one. Rematch time. Can Joshua? Well, we'll talk about that then.
All right. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. We'll be back next week. We'll have the Old Farts Corner back again. If you have any suggestions on who we should talk about, you can send us a tweet or a message on Twitter at grueling_truth. Make sure you check us out there. Make sure you go to YouTube, like and subscribe to our channel. Also, check out Caesar Sportsbook, which is our top recommended sportsbook for betting on the fights this weekend. That'll be in the link in the description down below the YouTube video. Check out our Facebook page and make sure you go to Amazon and buy all 3 of John Raspanti's books, Blood on My Notebook, A Few More Rounds, and Intimate Warfare. I didn't even have to look at the books that time to remember.
Wow. We are improvement.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Make sure you check out John at Max Boxing also. But for now, for John Raspanti, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.